my name is Daniel, and I'm from Northwestern, and I'm going to be taking you through some of our data extraction guidelines for the facial aging and appearance core outcome set today. So I've prepared a little PowerPoint, and I've opened up the various Google Doc Excel sheets, and I'm going to be going through a few things. I'm going to be defining the difference between an article and an outcome measure. We have a lot of terms we've kind of created, like shared outcome and shared outcome measures. So I'll explain those to you. I'll also explain how we've set up our Google Sheets, and I'm going to walk you through an example of the data extraction today. I'll also clear up some of the edge cases. There are a few exceptions to the rules, and a few times we do things a little differently depending on what the article is like. So I'll take you through those. So we have a team of 8 data extractors between our 4 sites, and this sets up a kind of interesting situation because for what we're doing, we would like to end up with a document that is similar to this. We're using this as a model paper. I will email you a link to this paper. It was written in 2008, and what the authors of this paper prepared was a table that we reference a lot that has all of their various, they've gone through and for a different field prepared a core outcome set. In this, they were at the same stage of outcome and data extraction as we are currently, and they were going through all of their various articles and extracting the frequency of various outcomes and outcome measures. And then they were categorizing them into various domains and subdomains is what they called them. So, for example, symptom severity was categorized under the domain of disease activity with the subdomain of clinical measures and symptoms. It's not that important for right now, but I think when we're done with extracting all of these articles, it will become more important to help us group these like outcomes together. So we do have an interesting situation since we have 8 data extractors, and we don't want to be stepping on each other's toes as we extract potentially similar data. So I'm going to take you through the different ways that we've come up with over the last few months to account for some of these challenges and ways that we're going to work through them. We've practiced it quite a bit between a few data extractors here at Northwestern, myself and Ariana, and I think that what we've come up with will work pretty well, and I'm going to teach you about that today. So a few basic definitions. When we refer to the article, that is the trial that you are extracting. When we refer to an outcome, that is distinct from an outcome measure. So for example, this example article studied small particle hyaluronic acid plus lidocaine for lip augmentation and perioral rhytids. Their outcome might be lip fullness. That was what they were measuring. That was the goal of the trial intervention. However, they measured that via some scale or measurement device. And in this case, it was something called the Metasis Lip Fullness Scale. So we make the distinction between outcome and outcome measure. When you're thinking about categorizing an article, you want to think about its outcome, that that the goal of the trial was, and then the outcome measure. That was what they used to assess it. However, in our situation, because we have many people extracting the same potentially similar outcomes, so for example, many people will extract articles that studied lip fullness. I'm sure of it. There are probably at least a dozen articles that studied the same thing. We have grouped outcomes together, and we've also grouped outcome measures together into what we call shared outcomes and shared outcome measures. I'm going to go into that further in this presentation, but I just wanted to give you the heads up on that so that I can help you explain this last term I have listed here, which is article outcome. So what you might be saying, what is the difference between an article outcome and an outcome? It looks pretty similar. So the difference is that someone in a study has studied lip fullness. However, the way that they studied lip fullness is different than the way that another trial studied lip fullness. That could be different in a variety of ways. It could be in the follow-up period, could be in the outcome measure that they used to study it. It could be used different in the way that whether it was the patient evaluating it or the clinician evaluating it. So this will become more important, but I just wanted to give you the heads up on these basic definitions. So we have two Google Doc Excel sheets that we're going to be using. We have more than two, but you will only interact with two. You will interact with your personal extractor sheet. So that contains information that pertains to your specific allotment of, I think it's going to be about 26 articles. So those are things that uniquely apply to those articles. But since I've mentioned that, we are going to be creating what I call shared outcomes or shared outcome measures and also shared indications. I'll go into each of these specifically. These are things that we will add to what you might think of as a communal bucket of common indications and outcomes and outcome measures that when you need to reference that your article or one of your article's outcomes that they were studying used one of those from that shared bucket, you will go to the shared sheet and you will reference one of those entries on the shared sheet on your personal extractor sheet using an ID number. And we will go through that. I will lead you through an example of that. So let's talk about articles and outcomes. So every article will contain one entry under the Articles tab. Let me show you what the Articles tab looks like. So here's an example of an extractor sheet. I'm going to be taking you through this study today. Not quite yet, in a few minutes, but here's the Articles tab. It contains information that pertains to that specific article. And since there is just one article and the article it's not shared between any data extractors, it belongs in your extractor workbook. And it has information pertaining to that article. I'll lead you through all of this. Sorry about that. Then every article will contain at least one entry under the Article Outcomes tab. So what is the Article Outcomes tab? Again, that's on the Extractor Workbook. So each article that you extract will have studied various things, and they will have studied them in a variety of ways. So they might have studied lip fullness by asking the patient something. They might have asked the clinician something. They might have measured something with a device. In each of those situations, each of those is categorized as a separate article outcome. And each of those gets its own row on this Article Outcomes tab. I'll lead you through this again as we go on. Now the shared outcomes, we're going to keep on coming back to these things, so I just want to kind of hammer it in. The shared outcomes are like this communal bucket that we share between all of us 8 data extractors. So those, since they're shared between us, they will go on a shared workbook. Now all of us will be able to edit this. So whenever you're extracting and you come across an outcome, you will go to this either the Shared Outcomes tab on here or the Shared Outcome Measures tab on here, and you will, if you need to create a new one, if it doesn't exist in the bucket yet, then you'll just create a new row for this. If it does exist, you'll just find the number that goes right here and you'll put it into your extractor workbook. So I'll show you how that works. And then the same thing applies for outcome measures. You'll go to the Outcome Measures tab on the Shared Outcome Measures tab on the Shared Workbook. you'll try to find it. If it is there, you'll reference the ID number. If it's not there, you'll create a new one. So I've outlined this in a little workflow. Basically, you extract your information for your articles. You extract for each article outcome. You will extract that on a separate row on your own article outcomes tab. And then you'll go through the outcomes and the outcome measures. You'll ask yourself, does it exist in the shared outcomes tab already? Does it exist in the shared outcome measures tab already? If it does exist, you'll just find that corresponding ID number and you'll put it into your respective shared outcome number or shared outcome measure number column on the outcomes or on the articles tab. If it doesn't, then you'll create a new one. I'll lead you through that. Now you might be asking why we're doing this. So part of it is efficiency, and then part of it is just it allows us to make distinctions between things that differ truly between studies, like the way that they implemented measuring an outcome or the way they implemented their outcome measure, versus things that really don't differ between studies, like the actual outcome measure in question. And doing that will help us group things together better at the end. It'll help us parse our data better, and it will make things a lot simpler when we're really trying to do the meat of the analysis. So in the next section, I'm going to take you through how exactly we're going to extract all of this information. And I'll lead you through for an example study. Start to finish, we'll extract all the pieces of that information, of that article. Thank you.